Part 3, The Piranha Tank. Chapter 28. So here we are, this is the scene. There's a clearing at the heart of the fair, a grassy space where people are gathering. They've brought picnics, flasks of coffee, crates of beer, bottles of wine. There are a few fires burning and the smell of chops sizzling and spuds baking. Kids wrestle, run and dance, babies gurgle and cry. Natasha stays close to Stan. They weave their way through the crowd towards a blue trailer. The blue trailer's wrapped in blue tarpaulin and a huge name is written there in gold. Pancho Pirelli. A few people speak to the pair as they pass by. Hello, young Stan. How do you do, Natasha? Stan hardly hears them. His eyes are on the trailer, on Pancho's name. He takes Natasha's hand and leads her forward. He feels like he's been drawn to this place. He shivers with excitement and fear and holds Natasha's hand tight. Come on, he whispers to her. Stay with me, please, Natasha. She whispers that she will. Then there's a hush, and suddenly there's Pancho himself standing beside the trailer. He's wearing a blue cape that's fastened at his throat with a golden cord. There's a pair of blue goggles on his head. He looks into the crowd and sees Stan there, and he smiles, and the smile makes Stan even more excited. Stan leads Natasha closer to the front of the crowd, so close they could almost reach out and touch Pancho Pirelli. Welcome, murmurs Pancho. Then his face hardens as he turns his eyes to the crowd. My name, he says into the hush, is Pancho Pirelli. People giggle and sigh and smile. Pancho raises his hand. I am here, he says, to touch the teeth of death for you. I am here to look into its eyes for you. I am here to dance it for you. Do it, Pancho, someone cries from within the crowd, and others start yelling. Do it, Pancho! We love you, Pancho! You are a madman, Pancho! You're crazy, you're balmy, you're wonderful! Do it for us! Pancho lets the voices go on for a moment, and he reaches up to the blue tarpaulin that's wrapped around the trailer. He tugs, and the tarpaulin separates like a curtain on a stage, and Stan's drawer drops open, for there behind the tarpaulin is clear water. The sun is shining down on it, and there's a shoal of fish swimming elegantly in it, and the whole trailer is a fish tank, and the fish are inside. Piranhas, gasps the crowd. Pancho Pirelli's perilous piranhas. Pancho turns, the voice fades away. These, he says, are my piranhas. The fish are rather pretty, oval-shaped, silvery grey, a flush of red on their cheeks and lower jaws. Each one is about the size of a child's head, no bigger than that. Stan stares. Piranhas, he whispers to Natasha. He knows, as most people do, their fierce reputation. These are the lethal fish of myth and legend, the fifth that will strip a man down to the bone in a second. But these fish, they seem so tame, so calm. Can they really be piranhas? There aren't piranhas, somebody yells. They can't possibly be piranhas. Pancho smiles. No, he says, of course they can't possibly be piranhas. Would you like to dip your hand in the tank to test them out? He walks forward and mingles with the crowd. How about you, madam? Or you, sir? People laugh. They back away and separate to let Pancho through. Stan watches Pancho weaving his way through the crowd. He watches the fish suspended above so beautifully in their crystal clear water, with their fins and tails propelling them elegantly forward, their mouths opening and closing as if they're saying, oh. Or you, young sir, comes a voice from his side. It is Pancho, of course, leaning down to Stan. You look like you know the world of fish, says Pancho. You look like you could almost be a fish yourself. Would you like to? But then he suddenly turns away and reaches out to grab a little boy standing nearby who's eating a sandwich. Or you, he snaps. You look like a mischievous kind of boy. Am I right? The boy can't speak, but the man with him says, Aye, you're right, Mr. Pirelli. He's a mischievous kind of lad. Daddy, cries the boy. He tries to pull away from Pancho, but he can't. He gasps and giggles and groans at Pancho's side. He's a little monster, Mr. Pirelli, says the father, who can hardly speak for laughing. He is a total terror. Me and the missus has often said he should get fed to Pancho Pirelli's piranhas. Then let's do it, said Pancho. He leads the boy towards the tank and takes a sandwich from his hand. What is this? He asks. Sausage sandwich, stutters the boy. Pancho holds the sandwich up to the glass wall of the tank. The fish rush furiously towards it. Their jaws open and shut, and their eyes glare viciously through the glass. The poor ickle fish are hungry, little boy, says Pancho. Shall I feed them your sausage sandwich? Aye, Mr. Pirelli, whispers the boy. There's a ladder fixed to the side of the tank. Pancho steps onto it, holding the sandwich in his hands. The fish inside swim up as Pancho climbs. The crowd laugh as the boy runs back to his dad. Pancho reaches the top of the ladder. He leans over the tank, he smiles and lets the sandwich fall, and his terrifying fish rush to it and savage it. And there's a tumult in the tank and silence in the crowd. Stan's heart thunders. He'd never seen anything so wild, and all for the sake of a sausage sandwich. He wonders, would those piranhas do the same to a boy? Chapter 29. Pancho smiles. The sandwich has gone. The fish swim with new energy and urgency, as if they're hunting for something more to gobble up inside that empty tank. See, he says, see what my fish can do to a sausage sandwich. Imagine what they could do to a... He groans in disappointment. But where's my mischievous boy, my ickle monster? I see he's run back to his dada. Pancho frowns. Give him back. Fish are hungry. They're waiting. The boy's father has both arms round his son. He glares at Pancho now, defying him to take the boy. Pancho relaxes and smiles. Don't worry, sir, he says. It's just my little joke. Your monster's safe. Now watch. He reaches under the tank and takes out a dead chicken. It's been plucked. He holds it by a leg and lets it dangle in front of him. It's time for something a little larger, he says to the crowd. He climbs the ladder again. He lowers the chicken into the tank. The fish launch themselves at it, and within seconds it's been stripped to the bone. Within a few more seconds, the bone has been stripped to nothing at all. The fish swim on in circles, in spirals, in threatening figures of 8. Do you think they've had enough? Asks Pancho Pirelli. Down the ladder he comes again. He's picked up an old shoe that's been lying on the ground. It's a twisted, stiff, dark leather thing. It's probably been lying there for months, for years. Pancho weighs it in his palm. He twists it, he pretends to sniff it, the crowd giggles. Then Pancho lobs it upwards, and it curves through the air and lands with a splash in the tank. Straight away, it's gone. Ripped by the piranha's teeth, snapped by their jaws, gulped down their guts, and still they roam, looking for more. Pancho turns his eyes to Stan, and when he speaks, it's like he's speaking just to him. Who would dare to dive into this tank to swim with these fish? His gaze intensifies. You. Stan grips Natasha's hand. He shakes his head. No, he murmurs. No. Pancho moves to the crowd again. Would you like to see Pancho Pirelli enter the tank, he asks. Would you dare to watch if he did? Or would you close your eyes? Would you turn away? Would you run off screaming? He holds out a red velvet bag. You must pay, of course, he says. You must give some money to see a man face such danger. Coins are dropped into the bag. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam. Sometimes he stops and looks at people with sadness or scorn. Is that all you're going to give? He whispers. Would you face death for that? Pay more, pay more. Thank you very much. Much better. He shakes the bag, jingles the coins. He seeks out those who try to hide, to avoid his gaze, to pay nothing. I see you, he says. You can't fool me. There's no hiding from Pancho Pirelli. You have nothing. Oh, but you must have the tiniest of coins somewhere. A cent, a farthing. Take it out, drop it in, and you'll see the greatest act you've ever seen. Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir. At last he smiles. He carries the heavy bag of coins to Stan. Will you look after this for me until I return, he says. Yes, says Stan, and takes it from him. Pancho unties the cord at his throat. The cloak falls from his shoulders. He's wearing blue swimming trunks. He holds the cloak out to Stan. And this as well, he asks. Stan takes the cloak. Pancho climbs the ladder. He pulls his goggles down over his eyes. He leans over the edge of the tank. And in he goes.
Chapter 30. People clap their hands across their eyes, turn their faces away. They gasp in horror. They imagine the tank turning red with Pancho's blood. There are giggles and laughter and screams, but not from Stan. Yes, his heart thumps, his skin crawls, his hands tremble, but he sees the courage and the beauty of it all. He sees Pirelli dive elegantly down through the water. The fish part to let him in. They arrange themselves around him as he hangs at the centre of the tank, beating the water with gentle movements of his feet and hands. Pirelli faces outwards, towards the watching crowd, and the fish do the same. And for a moment, everything inside the tank is almost still. Then Pancho moves, a gentle swaying of his body. He tilts his head, he moves his hands, he lifts his feet. He's dancing, whispers Natasha. And it's true. He dances, and the fish start to dance in formation around him, turning and curving through the water that just a few moments ago was the scene of such savagery. Then somebody yells out, "Breathe, Pirelli, breathe!" And everyone, entranced until now, realizes that Pirelli hasn't taken a single breath since he entered the water. How can he do such a thing? How can he have such control? Surely he must drown. But Pancho's face is calm, and his movements are fluid. The crowd pushes closer. They look upwards to the man and the fish dancing before and above them. How does he still live? How do his fish not strip him to the bone? As if to reassure them, Pirelli rises for a moment to the surface, tilts his face into the air, breathes in, and then dives down again to be with his piranhas. And they dance again, spiralling and turning, performing loops and whirls and somersaults, as if to some beautiful watery music that no one outside the tank can hear. Then Pancho Pirelli rises. He lifts himself from the water. He climbs out into the ladder. He raises an arm to acknowledge the wild cheering of the crowd, and then down he comes and takes his cloak from Stan. "Did you think I would die?" he asks. "No," whispers Stan. Pancho smiles and draws the cloak around himself. He lifts the goggles from his eyes. "Do you think you will die?" "Me?" says Stan. "Yes, you," says Pancho. "Do you think you will die when your turn comes to dive into the tank with my piranhas?" He reaches out and rests a hand on Stan's shoulder. "I will train you well, Stan. I will give you all the help you need, but in the end it will not be about training or help. It's your destiny, Stan. I knew it as soon as I looked at you. You have come to this place to take on the burden of Pancho Pirelli. You will be like me, Stan. You will be a performer of myth and legend. Your name will be written in gold on a blue tarpaulin. Imagine it, Stan." Stan imagines it. Stanley Potts. Then he runs in fear from his fate. Chapter 31. That night, as the moon shines through the caravan window, Stan sleeps with his hands dangling into a goldfish tank. He feels little fins and little tails rippling against his skin. He dreams of jaws and vicious teeth. He dreams of dancing to weird watery music. Behind her screen, Natasha can't sleep. She feels like she'll never sleep again. She stares into the moon and listens to the music from a waltzer and feels like she's waking from a sleep that's lasted forever and a day. Dostoevsky snores, turning and turning in his narrow bed. His dreams are of Siberia, of blizzards that howl and ice that turns the earth as hard as steel. He dreams of a slender woman dancing on a frozen lake of ice with tiny fragments of frost sparkling in the air around her. And he dreams of his Natasha. In his dream, she too is in a world of ice and frost, a world so cold that the girl has turned to ice herself. But there is a glimmer on her horizon, a hint of dawn. Maybe it means that the sun will return and his Natasha will start to thaw, will start to live again. But reader, let's leave this trio for a moment in their caravan. Let's have something like our own dream. Let's rise through the caravan roof and over this strange field filled with sideshows and rides and peculiar practices and magical moments and fires and chops and spuds and scorpions and fish and tents. Let's rise into the moonlight so that the fires shrink to the size of fireflies. The spinning waltzer becomes like a distant comet. Let's rise so that the town that contains the fairground is shrinking too, so that we can see the glistening vastness of the dark sea nearby and the huge bulges and jagged tops of the mountains. Let's rise towards the moon and the stars and the wonderful, terrifying hugeness of the universe. And let's look down, almost as if we were the moon itself, and see if we can see what has happened to the other fragments of our story. Look, there's the road between the mountains and the sea that Stan and Dostoevsky and Natasha followed in their journey from the Fish Key Lane. Let's follow it back the other way. Look, there's Fish Key Lane itself, so far off near the abandoned shipyard. Let's travel through the night and move closer to that place. How can we do this? You may well ask. But it's easy, isn't it? All it takes is a few words put into a few sentences and a bit of imagination. We could go anywhere with words and our imaginations. We could leave this story altogether, in fact, and find some other story in some other part of the world and start telling that one. But no, maybe later. It's best not to leave our stories scattered into fragments, so let's find them and start to gather them up. Ah, look there, down on the road leading from Fishkey Lane. See them? 2 tattered figures stumbling through the moonlight with sacks on their backs. Let's get closer. It's a woman and a man. Are we surprised to see that it is Annie and Ernie, the evicted relatives of Stanley Potts? They seem to have hardly anything with them, just a few belongings tied up into bundles. Let's go closer still. What's that in their eyes? Sadness. Yes, but determination too. Surely it's the determination to find their lost boy and bring him back to their fold. Perhaps they have heard a story of such a boy working on a hooker-duck stall on a piece of waste ground in a not too far away town. But how can we know what they know and what they think? Can we enter the minds with words and our imaginations? Perhaps we can. But listen, we don't need to. They're speaking. We'll find our Stan, says Annie to Ernie. Aye, we will, says Ernie to his wife. And the two of them step onwards through the night that is already turning into dawn. There we are then. They're heading in the right direction. Maybe it won't be long before they're right back where they should be, at the heart of the story. Keep going, Annie. Keep going, Ernie. The story's waiting for you. Your boy is waiting for you. Ha! See how they lift their thumbs when the early traffic passes? They're hitchhiking, reader. Let's hope the friendly driver takes them in and carries them fast towards the fair. But what's this now? Clattering along the road in the pre-dawn dark. Oh, heck, it's the daft van. And is that Clarence P. Clapp inside? His hands on the wheel? Is that Doug and Alf and Fred and Ted squashed in beside him? Yes, it is. Their expressions are urgent and determined too. The engine of the daft van roars. Its wheels rattle and rumble. Does Clarence P. recognise the 2 hitchhikers at the side of the road? Perhaps he does. He slows the van to a walking pace as he passes Annie and Ernie, as if he's about to offer them a lift, but of course he's only teasing. Their faces brighten, then darken as they recognise the van. They lower their thumbs, they look away. Clarence P. Clapp winds down the window, and along with Doug and Alf and Fred and Ted, he hurls a volley of abuse into their ears. Then there's a din of laughter, and the daft van's gone, hurtling towards Sam, hurtling back into the tail.